Where do you see real estate falling into the picture in the near future, or with the changes in CBDCs and Fed now?
Well, real estate is kind of an interesting circumstance. It has definitely been artificially inflated. And if you go back to 2008, you can see the central bank and the Federal Reserve came out and said, these are the areas that we have targeted for reflation, right? So the truth of the matter is, it is severely overvalued on a global basis, especially since what happened since 2020, okay? Now, globally, on average, you see a major decline in the price, but you've got to have a place to make your last stand. I mean, you're not going to camp out because real estate is overvalued. So you just need to be in a position that if you had to take out debt in order to do it, so you've got a mortgage, that you have the ability to, boom, pay that debt off in a heartbeat when they do that overnight revaluation, right? So there's a strategy around fixed rate debt, which is exactly the same strategy that the governments use. And that is to repay that debt with the currency, so in the US, with dollars that have less and less value. Would I go out and speculate on real estate right now? No. We've been watching the credit quality decline in purchasers. We've been watching all of these special little give-me's to get the most naive buyers of real estate buying real estate again, lower fees, put down less money, and therefore you're going to pay fewer fees, which is insane. So watching those kinds of manipulations shows me that they're trying to get the most naive people in the bunch to support this unsupportable, really, real estate market. But having said that, you got to have a place to make your last stand. So whether that's, a roof over your head, like, I have my house in Phoenix, which is an urban farm, so I can eat off of that. But also during 2020, when there were riots near my house and riots near my daughter's house, and I slept in my bed that night with a gun, and I woke up the next morning and said, aha, there is the hole, right? So I went out and it took a while, but I managed to find my bug out house. Did I care how much it cost? Not really, because I believe that it's going to save our lives. And we have a great place. The orchards I just was telling you, the orchards have been, other than a few things that they're still looking for, basically in. So stay tuned. You'll be seeing more of that. And it's completely off grid. So I've got a well. So it meets all of the criteria for the mantra: food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. So, with real estate, it kind of depends because you need it. But would I buy it because I think it's going to go up in terms of fiat dollars? Heck no. No. But would I buy it because it fit into my strategic plan that supported the goals that I'm trying to accomplish? Then, yeah.
You mentioned SOFR and LIBOR earlier. What's the simplest way to understand those two things and what's going on there?
Tectonic shift, right? I mean, they are so dead silent on this transition. And the problem is kind of what the problem was with the SVB and the other banks that went out, in that the value of their holdings, because of the increase in the interest rate, the market value of all their holdings declined, right? So when we conclude the transition, the end of this month is when it's supposed to be concluded. Even if it's in pennies, you're talking about trillions of dollars worth of contracts. Nobody really has any idea of how many trillions still have to shift. That is a tectonic shift, one that has never been attempted before, and is happening into a debt bubble, because all of these are debt instruments, right? All these derivatives and debt contracts that are shifting. right? So they're shifting into a bubble that is already popping. Whether or not they can keep that hidden for a little bit more, we're going to find out. Just like it seems like the banking crisis is over. No, it is not. And I don't doubt that even 1 second, and I don't care if it's the smallest community bank. And just recently, Janet Yellen came out and said that she expects more consolidations in banks. That means she expects more banks to go down. And yes, because the Federal Reserve and global central banks, so it's not just here, it's everywhere. Look at Credit Suisse and UBS, right? You know, globally, we had all those negative rate bonds in Europe, etc. And we had all those bonds that basically came at zero interest rates. And now the interest rates are going up. I mean, I think that's going to change. But the market's betting that the Federal Reserve is going to go in shortly and drop rates again. So the market no longer trusts what the Fed says, because the Fed showed them that they can't trust it. And that, if you remember, that was last August, surprised the Hades out of me when they actually gave up that level of confidence. Because the only level of confidence in this con game left is the public confidence that the currency could never go away, right? And that, I don't know. Do people still think the Fed knows what they're doing? That the Treasury knows what they're doing? Has this debt ceiling issue resolved? But the whole world, they took it to the exact moment pretty much. And the whole world that is based, the whole marketable world that is based on US Treasuries was looking at this and going, that's our bedrock? And they're playing with the bedrock? And now they're going to be issuing a whole bunch of treasuries to fill up the Treasury bank book, right? So they can write those checks, which, by the way, is inflationary, by the way. Okay? Is that crisis averted? No, we haven't seen the end of that crisis. But this whole thing is based on confidence, and it really did a job on a global level, which was already shaky. So yeah, no, we've got lots of issues that can erupt at any moment that we just can't see.
So SOFR and LIBOR are two different kinds of rates?
Correct. LIBOR was created in the 80s, and so you have all of those mortgages, car loans, student loans, which, by the way, people are going to have to start repaying now coming up in September. They had 3 years where they didn't, but now they're going to have to. Mortgages, credit cards, and derivative contracts, and a derivative is just a big unsubstantiated bet against, could be a stock or a bond or the weather, or whether or not you do your hair up or down. I mean, so there's just a lot of leverage, way more leverage that is built into the system today, which is basically debt upon debt upon debt upon debt upon debt, which makes everything look great on the way up, but it also crashes the system on the way down, and that bubble is popping. So yes, once it was discovered that, shockingly, traders were manipulating the LIBOR, which was just a few banks getting together and go, gee, if I were going to charge you interest overnight, this is how much I would charge. And if I were going to pay interest overnight, this is how much I would pay. Once it was discovered that it was being manipulated, they had a good long run. Then they had to come up with a new benchmark. And so in this country, we came up with SOFR. And they have to shift from one to the other. And while it's supposed to be a market rate, when you read the really fine print, they eliminate a lot of bonds from that. So is it really a market rate? Meh. And the rate that they get for SOFR is different than the LIBOR rate. So that's why it's a tectonic shift that revalues trillions of dollars worth of assets that have not yet been converted. And those that have been, like especially for leveraged loans, CLOs, which are packages of leveraged loans, what they're finding out is that they're taking in a lot less money as well. So they're fighting it. They're still fighting it. That's a big problem. And they're not talking about it. Why aren't you talking about the biggest experiment in history? Why aren't you talking about it? Kind of makes me nervous. So it may be a big fat nothing burger, but I don't think so. It's just, when are we going to notice it?
LIBOR's London, SOFR's US.
Well, LIBOR, yes, is the London interbank offer rate, but it was used globally. Okay, and so far is at this point primarily being used in the US, but that too could be used globally, but I don't think it's gonna make it. There were like about 5 central banks that came up with their own new interest rate benchmark. So we'll see. But even what they did to try and fix that difference was come up with some kind of mathematical formula. But even with that formula, they cannot get it to match LIBOR. So that means that the valuation of all of these contracts that are based on LIBOR and shifting into SOFR, those valuations change. You can't tell me that's a nothing burger, because I don't believe it. On how many contracts? Who knows? They were saying something like over 610 trillion, but nobody really knows how. I mean, admittedly, nobody really knows how many derivative contracts there are out there. And before they changed the accounting rules, I personally, with my own eyes at the Bank for International Settlements, counted 1.4 quadrillion. And that, I think, was like in 2009. And that market has exploded since then. So how many quadrillions? There's no way to bail it out. No flippin' way.